company called Bonfire Studios, and I was a journalist for a long time. Only kind of journalism so we will start with Felicia.
Hi, I'm Felicia Day. Thank you. Thanks, guys. I should come out of my house more often. You might know me from my on-screen work and things like The Guild or Supernatural. But I do a lot of voiceover work as well, especially lately since I haven't been coming out of my house. I decided to breed, and so that child keeps me pretty pinned down. Doesn't allow me to play games as much, which I'm totally fine with. Anyway, I've done voices in things called like Dragon Age, Fallout New Vegas, Guild Wars 2, and I'm doing a big voice in this new game, Dungeons of Naheulbeck. So I'm very excited about that and talk about that. Yeah. I'm excited. You go. It's not working. Push the time.
Am I right?
There you go.
So I'm here, I'm the publisher of Dungeons of Naheulbeck. So mostly I will leave my guest here and talk about that what you are speaking. And maybe I will have the chance to introduce you to them.
It's my turn. Hey everyone, I'm Andrea Renee. I'm one of the founders of What's Good Games, a video game podcast. Publishes tomorrow morning if you want to subscribe on podcast services. I'm honored to be here to talk about RPGs and voice acting. I have never voice acted before.
Never?
I've done lots of voiceover, but never playing a character. I've actually, like Morgan, only have one D&D character, and I don't have a voice for it yet, other than my own, because I tried a voice once, and I was so super inconsistent. I was going in and out of my regular voice, and I was like, maybe I should just not.
Yeah,
You gotta be committed.
Yeah, you could say your character's going through puberty. Girls are confusing.
Thanks for the pro tip.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, it's free. This has been your lukewarm take of the day. Is it my turn?
It's your turn.
Your
Hi
turn.
everyone, my name is Micah. Hi Micah. Oh, I didn't even have to force you to do that. That's amazing. If you've heard any of my work, I'm in the world of Animu. It's a very trashed type of genre. I voice Soul in Soul Eater, Yuno in Black Clover, Kaido in The Disastrous Life of Psyche K, Best Jeanist in My Hero Academia. That's about it. And other things. You can look it up on Google. Happy to be here.
Alright, so we can start by, let me ask our voice actors, and maybe we can get a lesson from this. How do you start conceiving of a voice for a character?
How do you start?
Yeah.
It begins with a director telling you exactly what to do. And no joke, because you could walk into the booth and say, I have this idea for the character, and the director will go, well, that's not what the project calls for. You know what I mean? For example, if I think, oh, I'm gonna use a southern accent, I'm gonna come in, and he's gonna be like, no, the character's French. What the thing what you're doing with your mouth, don't do that. Don't do that thing. But usually just coming up with a brief backstory of where the character began. Are there certain tics about him that makes him speak a certain way? Is he uptight? Do you put the placement in front of the mouth? Is he lazy? Does he slur and things like that? You know, basic things, I guess.
Basic things. I like those tips. So when you are conceiving of your character and you're trying to figure out where in the mouth that character is going to speak, how does that work? Please tell me. Please give me the information.
In my experience, if a character is more intellectual, they'll speak from the front of the mouth and enunciate and pronounce things very properly. Whereas if you're playing a punk, it's kind of laid back and you don't really pronounce all of the letters and the words because you don't care. You know, things like that. Just subtle things that make the character just a little different, even though you're using the same voice.
And let me ask you your experience in voice acting.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me, I auditioned for quite a bit of, and I'll get the description of the character, and just from a small paragraph, you have to create a real person. And so use ourselves as touchstones. We want to find what's inside ourselves because, like, if they want a mature woman who has gravitas, they probably won't ask me to do anything. But, for like a 14-year-old who has insecurity issues and maybe is slightly, inhibited and a weirdo, like, I'm their go-to. So I definitely play things more in my wheelhouse, but, variations on that. And I think, Michael's right. You kind of figure out a couple of key things that kind of anchor you into yourself so that you feel like you can seamlessly be this person. And whether that's like just where the voice sounds in your mouth or just kind of looking at the character and having that inform you, like, certainly looking at Veronica in New Vegas, like that's a gritty, realistic thing, so you're not going to be quite as broad or cartoony as you would in something like Nickelback, which is like very, not totally cartoony, but like much more cartoon representation of a person. So you kind of gauge, like, just based on the project, but also like where it sits inside you, the character.
And we actually have a clip that we're going to play.
Oh, there's a clip.
Maybe.
I am Zangar, master of this place. I reign supreme over this prestigious establishment, guarded by hordes of mercenaries, bloodthirsty assassins, and by the most terrible monsters. Adventurers who come thirsty for it. I shall fend off their pathetic parties with spiders, cursed knights, skeletons, lots of skeletons. There's nothing in here to defile my glorious structure. Adventures now for the time of the tavern. They are obtuse, clumsy, and stupid. I shall make them throne. From the catacombs to the highest towers, I shall make them bleed through the halls of the dungeon of Summer 2020.
And can you give us some information about the game and a little bit about the journey that you've been on to get here?
Yeah, I will tell you quickly about the game. So, Dungeon of Love, I'm sorry, it's French, so it can be hard to spell in English. I know now it's hard to spell in English. So it's a very famous IP in France. It was created by a character named John Lane. It actually started as an audio show. So we started like almost 20 years ago now as an audio show telling the story of a bunch of very crappy adventurers going into a dungeon. And it got like 5 or 6 seasons in France. And the audio is very, very important to us because the first story was told as an audio story. And when we started the game, it was obvious for everyone that we need to have very great actors to play the characters. So in France, we have a very nice cast made of popular actors and YouTubers and cast of many guests. And we were looking for someone who could have the same spirit as we had in the game, in the series before. And it was obvious to us that Felicia would be our best choice because of the game, because of what she likes.
Yeah, I actually heard about this when I went to France to release the Guild DVD, and so when I was there, there's this amazing bar, if you ever go to Paris, called The End of the World, right? And so it's this nerd bar that has like a Game of Thrones area, and it has like a TARDIS, and it has like, it's like the best nerd bar in the world, you guys, so if you go to Paris, go there. And so when I was there, somebody mentioned, did you ever heard of Nowak? And I was like, this is weird, no? And so I went home and I was like, oh, this guy just made audio dramas before there were podcasts and uploaded to the internet and became a phenomenon in France. And I was like so inspired because that's kind of what I did with the Guild here. And so when they approached me for the game, I was so excited because like, not only is the humor, like my sense of humor, because it's very funny, but also just like the origins of it feel very special to me, you know, just DIY. Like just make what you want to do and make it awesome, and that's what he did. Yeah.
She did a great job.
Oh, thank you.
So she will be the magician in the game, so there is several characters. They're all like kind of typical RPG characters where you have a rogue magician, you have an archer, an elf archer, that kind of thing, totally fun. And what was tricky key about the game was we still wanted to tell this funny story, but at the same time to have a very deep tactical RPG. And one of the developers here, we will show you a bit of the game later, and I think they really did a good job to that. So we will have this funny story, we will have this hardcore tactical RPG. If you're not into hardcore, you can switch to easy mode, and basically we have this story and going through, listening to the voices of Felicia and other actors. And I'm very glad we made that with you.
I play a know-it-all who's very snarky, so it's very far from my usual wheelhouse. So you kind of want to look at that, me stretch as an artist. Anyway, total snarky know-it-all. Yeah, exactly.
And what drew you to the game?
Sorry?
What made you interested in the game?
In the game, I work on another game that is published by Dear Villagers as well, called Edge of Eternity. It's a love letter to the RPG genre, JRPG genre, and I voiced Darian in it. Yeah. But what drew me to that kind of stuff is just the idea that you can be any character you want. You know, you're not limited by what you look like, what you sound like, or anything like that. It's just the creative imagination of the entire genre.
So we actually have some live play of the game so that we can show everybody.
Easy. It's, not very detail-oriented, are you? Really? Just off the password, smartass. Maracas.
Password.
Maracas.
Password.
It's maracas.
Right.
Guys!
No, it's maracas!
So basically the game will be exploring this city dungeon. And most of the
I'm
party
here to bet your purses don't look very fat.
Excuse me? Who looks fat?
We're here for Midranthers IOU.
Oh, finally. So paying up or what?
What? Hey, they're dying! Out of curiosity, how much would it cost us to get it back?
6,000 gold coins.
Fucking hell. Maybe we could find another arrangement.
Yes. I also accept jewels and magic items or even enchanted weapons. Midranthir already pawned a two-handed sword some this time.
Or I could punch you in the face.
If that's the way you want it, this is not going to end well.
Wait, actually, we need your help.
Oh, really?
Yes, look. This sword is way too sharp. Orc skulls will help to blunt its edge nicely.
Let's battle.
So now they will fight, so you will find some kind of XCOM-like kind of game, tactical RPG. The combat are very tactical because you have many characters to manage, and you will have many opponents, so it's a large part of the game get it from you have this kind of scene every time.
Do it again.
So while we're the footage is still going to play, but I do want to talk to you a little bit about the impact that voice acting has on games, and the difference between a game without the video and with video, and how that's had an impact on the industry over the years.
My Morgan, that's a big question.
I know. I kept making the question bigger and bigger and bigger.
Well, I think what's really interesting about looking at voice acting with RPGs specifically is that the character you play is rarely voiced, right? Like, because that's part of the role-playing aspect of the games, that you get to really embody this character, kind of envision them to be, the character you want them to be. And so, the characters that people like Felicia and Micah play, I think really have way more of an impact, all of the NPCs in these worlds, and how you develop relationships with them, whether you love or hate them, or whether they are useful to you or not. And I think that when you look at the impact of those roles, it really depends on what the game is and really what the publisher and the developer want to do with those. So I think it's interesting looking at some of the stuff that Dear Villager has done and how they have really put an emphasis on making sure that their NPCs have personality and feel like they color the world in a way that other RPGs maybe feel a little bit more generic. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, and obviously everybody has a budget. You can't fully voice every character in every game, unless you have just mountains of money somewhere. But I think that when you look at how impactful voice acting is, for me, I put so much emphasis on story. And I know that there's forever this debate, and I would be interested to see maybe a show of hands from the audience of, gameplay versus narrative. So who puts priority on gameplay? Far fewer than I thought, actually. Zogs, this is a narrative group, nerdy for narrative up in here? Yeah. So I think that, obviously you're in a panel for RPGs, so clearly you're like, what all about the narrative? So I think that when you look at, RPGs, because they're trying to extrapolate it to all genres, it's just, we would be here all day, everybody. We could do a whole panel just about that. I think it's fascinating to look at how impactful those roles are. And Mike, I think it'd be interesting also to hear kind of your perspective as someone who's, worked on multiple properties with Dear Villager, and how different you think it is working with them as a publisher versus other people you've worked with.
Right. One of the cool things that Dear Villagers has been pushing is just character-driven games. When I was approached to play the main character in Edge of Eternity, they were very clear on how they wanted to portray the character, gave me strict sort of guidelines of where not to cross in terms of my character suffers of PTSD, but he doesn't understand it. It's something that is only seen from people on the outside. He's struggling, he doesn't understand fully what it is. And I think it's interesting because you have these different choices of having your main character not voiced, and you can be the one immersed in the story. You're the main character, whereas you have these characters who are voiced, and you get to experience the story and kind of be a part of that big theatrical experience. And I love how they play with that.
And are you a narrative or a gameplay person?
Am I what?
A narrative?
Oh, for sure. I play everything on easy mode. I'm sorry. Whatever. I don't have time to be killed in a game. I don't have time to be hunted in a game. I don't have time to be poor in a game, okay? So I'm gonna cheat, I'm gonna play on easy mode, and I'm gonna get the story into my eyeballs, because that's really what I care about.
Preach.
Exactly. I downloaded Stardew Valley like the second day it was out, and I downloaded a hack and I got a lot of money, okay? I'm so sorry. I'm not gonna be poor. I'm gonna be a poor farmer in a game, all right? I'm gonna buy all the turnips I want, and I'm gonna do it, okay?
That's how Alicia got to buy this.
But I think that gameplay, I think, as story is underappreciated. That's why I tend to gravitate toward those either big, huge, Dragon Ages and Fallouts that have a bigger sprawling narrative, or the very text-based ones like Baldur's Gate or Disco Elysium is one that I'm just obsessed with because the writing is so good. To me, that writing is as good as any screenplay out there, and I think that it's games are undervalued in that respect. But I think that they're getting more and more popular, especially since I think pen and paper RPGs are becoming more popular. Maybe that narrative is kind of bleeding over into video games.
Is there a time when VO in video games fails or falls
to do. Like when Star-Lord like did that thing at the end in Avengers. I don't want to spoil anything, but you're just like, what are you doing? Like that's not what anybody would do. Just control your temper like a real person. And then, you know, I think we all get mad when people act out of character. Like Game of Thrones, you know, certain things happen where you're just like, what in the world? And I think that we all get really triggered because we have got to know a character, and that character needs to be consistent, or we need to understand why that character is changing and what's making them change, right? And so I think that's the particular when we all get upset at a TV show or a game, it's when a character is being violated. So really character is the most important thing.
It's probably really hard because you can't help but as the player putting yourself into that character's shoes, even if they're totally not like you. And then, so you just can't help but sit there and be like, no, don't do that. Why are you doing that? And you're like, oh, that's what that character would do. I'm like, I don't think so.
I don't think so. Yeah, and I think, you know, somebody told me that good writing, you can cover up the name of the character in a script and you can just read the line and you know what character said that line, right? That's what good writing is because the voice is so clear. And that was what I noticed when I was recording this game. Like, there's always, when another character would read a line, I always knew, oh, that's the rogue that I'm responding to, or that's the elf. Because each character is really well drawn, and so you know their voice, even if there's not an actual voice behind the line. And I think that's where it all comes from. Micah is nodding.
I agree.
Oh, good, yeah.
I fully agree, yeah. Oh, no. She just pointed out that I was nodding, yeah.
Totally nodding. Mine was at the end of The Last of Us. I did not like, I mean, it's, if you haven't played it by now, it's kind of, yeah.
It's fine, just spoil it.
It's fine.
Just do it.
It's fine. It's 2020.
Well, they don't need to play part 2 here. We're all mad about it.
I would have sacrificed the girl to save humanity, but that's just me. That's just me. I know.
Wow.
I just learned something about you, Morgan.
And he kills all the doctors? Why? No reason. Those are like the last 3 people who know how to like cure the
I
zombie
mean, I
plague.
felt a little guilty about it, but
I was so mad. I was like, you can't make me. And then I'm like, oh, the game's gonna make me. And then I found out later that you didn't actually have to. Anyway, these are things that I'm working
No, but I'm with you that, you know, a single performance could potentially make or break a game for you. I mean, we've all seen games that had, you know, maybe some lackluster or out of character performances that really kind of tainted the whole experience. I think it really just emphasizes how crucial voice acting, writing, and directing to something that I think people don't talk a lot about is how important voice directors are.
Yes.
And we don't really get to hear from them a lot in the video game community because they're usually like locked away working somewhere. But if you do ever get to see a panel here at PAX that includes a voice director, you should definitely go because they're super fascinating to learn from.
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest issues when it comes to bad voice acting in video games is just crunch. You know, it's the thing that I'm glad the gaming industry is trying to fizzle out because it's just bad for everyone involved. But not having enough budget or not enough care to tell a good story through these voices is probably one of the biggest issues. Not enough time, not enough money.
See, that's interesting, because I always kind of thought that, just as the viewer, when you get these sort of weird, disjointed lines, I'm like, are they just not giving the actor any context at all?
It could be. Yeah.
So
It
they're
could be
just-
that you have these sessions where they tell you just go into the booth, they give you a little background of like what you're doing without like details or anything, and they say, and go.
Right.
And you have like 2 hours to finish your work, and that's it. You know?
And like, who am I responding to? What are we talking about? I don't know.
There was a project I did where I came in and I didn't know what I was doing. I thought I was playing some sort of background character. Turns out he was a boss in the video game. So my really bad generic, take this, was the boss for some strange reason. And I'm like, because people started coming up and saying, hey, I really like your character in this project. And I'm like, thanks? What am I? So I looked up a Let's Play and I'm like, oh no, I suck.
that's not your fault, though. I did a movie called Red Werewolf Hunter for Sci-Fi, and listen,
Hey, thanks.
I've done some stuff, y'all. And like, I was like, where are the werewolves? And they're like, they're your height, so just look at your, because it's green screen, right? So I'm just acting with nothing. So I'm like, you know, and like, and it turns out later they CGI'd the werewolves to be wolf size. So I'm like looking at nothing. so great, and that puts us in a bad position. So
It
it's
does.
always nice when people care enough to be like, okay, this is the attitude you need to have. And that's what we did in the booth for this game. Where it's
Yes.
like, okay, how is she approaching this? Why is she saying this way? Okay, go with that.
Did somebody just die?
What happened? Whoops.
Hey, you okay, bud?
I don't see that.
Someone's having a stroke.
I want to ask really quickly, because I'm guessing a couple of people in this audience have questions about this. How do you get into voice acting?
You know, the answer has changed over the years. Before it was, it was based on like how much acting experience you got and making connections in the industry. But we live in the age of indies. Dear Villagers is a great example of that. So you can actually have a decent career as a voice actor just from your own home, as long as you have a decent recording setup. So my recommendation is get as much acting experience as possible, like join some community theater or even, heck, read to kids at the library. You can practice different voices and it won't cost you a thing, and you're doing something good for your community. You can buy microphones for cheap these days, for less than $100 for a decent mic, and record in your closet as long as the quality's decent. So start there.
And you can practice games in your voices in your D&D campaigns.
Exactly, perfect. Just don't do it in public, then people are gonna be like, who's that weirdo? He's holding a bag of Doritos and talking to himself.
There's something about going to a party with a bunch of voice actors. I'm sure you've done it.
Oh, yeah. Well, being in the video games business as long as I've had the honor of interviewing several voice actors over my career, and a couple of them more than once. We were in London last year for a What's Good fan meetup and some other things we were doing there, maybe going to the Spice Girls concert. And we got to have dinner, Christine Steimer and I, who was on the show with us, I had dinner with Troy Baker and Nolan North. Now, let me tell you, sitting down at a meal with the two of them together, you may know their show, Retro Replay. Anybody watch their show? It's great. If you didn't know they had a show, it's really funny, you should watch it. They're just like, they just kept firing off stuff all night long, and I'm like, don't you guys ever take a break? Like maybe just like talk in your normal voice for a little while? And no, they kept comparing different types of British accents, and they kept doing different types of accents throughout the meal, and I felt a little mortified that we were in London and all these people kept looking over, and I was like, they think we're making fun of them, let's go. But it's really interesting kind of hearing the diversity amongst actors and how certain actors really specialize in certain types of voices, and then there are some actors who are kind of like a jack of all trades and do like a wide range. And I always find it really fascinating learning from actors and how they kind of honed that part of their talent. Like, so for Felicia and Micah, did you guys know early on what type of actor you wanted to be when it came to voices, or did you kind of have to like trial and error?
Felicia?
I mean, I think that you do find like your niche. Like as far as like voiceover for me, I certainly didn't expect to, like mostly my voiceover agent sends me teenagers or kids because I have like I can talk really like this little kid, like either a little boy or a little girl. Like it doesn't matter the gender of the character. It's like if they're awkward, if they're socially awkward, like I'm probably gonna get an audition for it, which is fine. I think it's really fun. It's something that I have fun doing, but like I certainly wouldn't have gone into it thinking I would play a kid, right? Like that would not be something I would assume going in.
That's not a life goal.
Yeah, it's not a life goal. You're gonna be a perpetual 8-year-old. I mean, hey, man, Minnie Mouse did it, which is funny. Like, 'cause she died, and then like 3 days later they put out a casting call for her. It was like a week. Anyway, but it's cool because she got to be Minnie Mouse her whole life, and like you don't get like aged out. Like I think that's wonderful because in Hollywood, like your age, your face is what you are. And so if you transition to a different age group, like you're not gonna work, especially the older you get. And the great thing about voiceover actor is like you can be eternally whatever you want, and that's what's really fun about it.
But do you think you imagine yourself when you're playing a different kind of character?
I mean, I've played I have in Glitch Text, I just had a show come out week. And so I was a consulting producer on the scripts, but I also got to do a couple voices. And I played like a sullen teenager, but I also played this woman who, you know, she's a crazy like teacher, and so she's kind of like a Mary Poppins wackadoodle, and so that was really fun. Another show, Miles from Tomorrowland, the creator called me and was like, hey, what do you want to play? And I was like, I just don't want to play a teenager who's awkward. I would really like to play an evil sorceress, you know, so he created a part for me where I got to do a British accent, a bad British accent, you know, because that's not my specialty, but it was very fun. And it was outside my wheelhouse. So yeah, I mean, I'm gonna work on my French accent, right? It's really bad, so. A lot of work. I tried, it was wretched.
I'm polite, yeah.
Yeah, well, thanks. But not polite enough not to lie.
So I do want to ask one more question. We are going to open the floor up to questions in a little bit, and I want people to think about this question too. What game was it that really made you see the magic of VO, or you had that incredible VO experience where you really identified with the character and felt like maybe you were that character, and how it changed a game for you? So think about that. Everybody, we're going to talk about here also. So we'll start with Micah.
Oh no.
Oh, sorry. We'll start with Felicia.
Oh, God.
Oh yes.
I'll start.
When I was playing Dead Rising and I had the double chainsaw, no. I mean, as far as acting goes, the game that really, to me, like, transcended, like, voice act was Last of Us. I mean, just the acting in that, like, the motion, like, everything about it was really cinema, you know, and it was really heartfelt, and it had emotion to it. I think, you know, sometimes in video games, emotion is not really considered, like, an asset. But like, if you really, really love the characters, then you're gonna be so invested. I literally cried when they killed Bane off in Mass Effect 3 to the point where I've never finished that game and I will never pick it up again. Like, I was sobbing. I was like, this was my man. How did you take him from me? He was a fish man, and yet he was so sexy and tormented. It really upset me, y'all. I will never finish that game. Ever.
Is there an ending where he doesn't die?
A what?
Is there a version where he lived now?
He doesn't die. No, you have to kill him. And then he has a hot son, and I was like, can I get in the son's pants? But no, can't take the son. That's creepy.
How do you follow that?
I think that we're done here. We should probably just
Well, thank you guys for coming.
I only dated the ladies in Mass Effect, so.
Liara, Team Liara.
And then she dated somebody else at the end, and that's fine. I'll sort out that at all. Oh, okay.
I really enjoyed the voice acting in the Arkham games.
Oh yes, very good.
It was just really cool to see Batman done in such a really pretty style with all the familiar voices that you've grown to love. It's nice when something kind of grows up with you, a franchise grows up with you.
Well, I have two examples. One's like a really funny one, and then one's a little bit more emotional. So I think the team at TT Games that does the Lego games have phenomenal voice work in their games, and I think it's so interesting how they get this like really wide selection of actors who get to play in their games, and like I think the voice work in those titles really help contribute to the comedy in those games. And if you guys haven't really been paying attention, or if you haven't played the Lego games, they're phenomenal games, and I really encourage you to try them out. And one of the games that really kind of stuck with me as like an emotional moment was Telltale's The Walking Dead Season 1 with Lee.
Yeah.
That character, it was just like so impactful, and like there was, you know, those types of kind of like walking adventure games can kind of go either way. Either the voices of the characters are like really grippy, or you know, you're more into like the environmental like puzzles and the storytelling in different ways. But that character specifically really kind of like hit me in a way. So.
Your turn.
Oh, go.
on my side, I remember I spent so much about deep character, but I remember for years I've been listening to the Rose Joe files from Baldur's Gate 2, and actually I had in my car engrailed on disc with music, and sometimes I had the characters, the one talking to his hamster.
Oh.
Yeah. And when I have friends coming in my car, and when I have friends coming in my car, so you have one music and night from Baldur's Gate, so I kept that disc for years, and it was a personal file. That's something that is very inspiring for me. I love that game, so I just love to listen to those short tracks from while to while. I still have it.
I would say that my answer is probably Femshep from Mass Effect, because it's been a really long time since I played those games, since everything's sort of fuzzy about them. But I just remember Jennifer Hale, right, I think did Femshep.
She did. Oh, she's
I just
so good.
remember it's so good. So good. There's just something so strong and powerful, and something so very that I could just really identify with her, and good and evil. She just killed it. She was really impressive. And I like your comment about The Last of Us and the emotionality of it, and I think that we don't see a lot of that in video games, because part of me is I kind of want to shout out the Gears franchise, because their voice acting is so ridiculous, but it so fits with the stupidity, over the top, chainsaw, super bro-y, it fits with it.
Yeah.
So it's definitely part of the experience, but not emotional.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever cried during the Gears game. No, definitely not.
Not even Gears 2? Yeah, well, that's a different moment.
I know, but that's why. I know.
StarCraft, I only watched, I don't really play StarCraft, but I watched all the cutscenes. And it's really great. When characters no, that's really good movie. That's a movie they're writing, right?
They're beautiful. Those cutscenes are beautiful.
Yeah.
You can see all the shine on the armor and the damage
It's
and
amazing.
everything. It's so good. Obviously, I was focusing on the armor.
Sorry. I think one of the cool things about voice acting is that if it's very good, the actors disappear, and you only see the character. It's not really something that you can experience in live action television, where you see the actor's face and whatever. And sometimes if the makeup's really good, you forget it's the actor. But if performance in voice acting in video games or animation is stellar, then you completely forget that it's performance and you get invested in that character.
And Troy's one of those people I think that I only find out after the fact. I'm like, oh, that was Troy?
Yeah.
That?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that.
And that's the best feeling,
That's
right?
the best feeling.
Yeah. And you're like, oh, I didn't even recognize you.
I think Ashley Burch is the same way. I was going to that. Aloy was my third runner-up, and I was like, do I talk about another name?
Do it.
But I think that she's another one of those actors that I feel like when you listen to her work, that she really kind of changes the quality of her vocal tone in a way that you almost have to look at it and think, is that Ashley?
Yep.
So also when you guys come for questions, let us know who your favorite voice actors are too, because that would be cool to hear and learn about more actors and learn about their work. So we're gonna take questions. I don't know where the microphones are.
There's one there I see in the aisle, and I don't think the other aisle has one.
Sorry.
But there's a little opening in the middle, so you can cut over to that. Here we go. So if you have a question, now would be the time to line up, everybody.
Oh, also when the voice acting in Animal Crossing, when Tom Nook takes away all your money.
I was gonna say Animal Crossing actually, because there's something so visceral about their little and then when you type it goes hey.
Peter.
I may have played a lot of Animal Crossing. The new Animal Crossing comes out, I think on the 30th.
Hey, Peter.
It's like that, and the Sims voice actor.
Yeah.
Yes.
How do they do that?
That is a skill.
It is definitely a skill. It's like scat singing. No, except without the music.
Hi, I live in Brighton. It's a part of our club. I was wondering, I'm trying to get a full-time job and try to go to grad school though, but I'm also interested in voice acting though. How do you really need do you guys have a job to fall back on, though, besides voice acting?
It's rare to be predominantly a voice actor because it is freelance work for the most part. It's not like you sign a contract and you're with the company forever. So most actors have side gigs that they do. I'm sure that you also do like writing on the side and directing and things like that. But yeah, it's good to have something, a fallback in the seasons of work that are leaner, for sure.
Yeah, I do lots of, I mean, voice acting is not my primary source of, income. It's not what I do for a living. I mean, I do it for fun, and I do it a lot, but I would say that my writing mostly, producing, live action acting. Actually, I think I'm more of a I've done more voiceover the last couple of years than live action acting. But I do a little bit of everything, because I think you're right, you have to diversify. Like all of the, if you're an artist, you're basically freelance all the time, unless you happen to have a job that kind of lasts a couple of years. So you constantly have to be looking for your next job, and so I like that. It's a lot of insecurity, but that's what I thrive on. But I'm insecure, so I needed more insecurity in my life.
Same.
Exactly. So, but if you want to do one of these things as a profession, you have to know that it has to be a hobby until you get to the point where you kind of tip over into it being a profession. And it can definitely go back and forth.
Also health insurance.
Health insurance,
Yeah.
Thank goodness for
I know.
unions. Yeah, unions do help out a little bit on that.
And doing your own taxes.
Doing your own taxes. Yeah. Adult things. Fleck.
Yeah.
Next question.
Definitely have a fallback.
Hi there. My name is Kyle. If we're talking about favorite voice actors, Bigby Wolf from Wolf Among Us. I think that was Adam Nice.
Good choice.
My question is, as voice actors and people in the industry, where do you think the industry is moving right now when it comes to voice acting, particularly in games that will be queer-led, with queer characters, queer protagonists, or non-binary characters?
Interesting.
I mean, I think voice acting is heading to a place. There's so much more content now. I mean, I audition for 2 or 3 shows a week just to be on cartoons and things like that. Video games are a little different, but I think it's wonderful that there's more diversity in this world. I personally will not audition for a role that is not my sexual orientation or if it's not my race. Like I got an audition for Jasmine, and I was like, absolutely not. But there are instances of people playing cross ethnicity. I think
Laura Bailey is a good example of her character in Uncharted.
yeah, she played an African American woman, right?
Correct.
I mean, that's just not a choice I would personally make, but I mean, she's wonderful, incredible. But I think, and that was years ago too. I think we've gotten to the point where it's a tipping point where people need to sort of be in our lane. Let's be in our lane and give more opportunities for people. So I'm just happy that more voices are out there and we can experience that and then give more jobs to people who maybe have been in marginalized groups before.
I think games in particular. Oh, go ahead. Yes, please. I think a lot of game developers are pushing for more diversity in voice acting in particular. I'm involved with a project right now that in years previous did not handle certain things delicately, but they brought on someone this year for this certain project. And they changed a lot of the terminology to be a lot more inclusive. If there was something in the writing that wasn't good, they'd be like, yeah, no, how about no? So it's really nice to see, instead of people putting their foot down and being like, no, this is how it's always been and it's always gonna be. Because who wants that, really? Come on. But yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is James. I have a statement and a question.
Oh no.
The statement is, I would think that the best voice acting was in a game called Lunar, the Silver Story Complete.
Ooh.
With that guy who played Galleon was great. It was not Galleon, Magic Emperor Galleon. I thought it was cool. But my question is, can any of you do a really good Titus laugh?
Do what?
Oh, I'm sorry, Titus? Do you prefer Titus? Final Fantasy X, big anime? No?
Mike is looking up something on his phone. Stand by.
My favorite thing was hearing that in
Terrible.
the Joker movie, like, you know, when you're replacing the Joker laugh with different laughs from other things. That one was one of my favorites.
That's a good move.
Oh, you playing?
Yeah, I can totally do a really good Don't Look. Where are you?
This is the problem with searching for something on YouTube. Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to my channel. YouTube.com/what'sgoodgames.
That is what they heard for Grammarly.
What is going on? He's making faces.
That's my best impression. Why you ask that? Go sit down. Okay, you need to leave now. Hi.
Hi, my name is Abby, and I don't really have a favorite voice actor because I love everyone. My question is for Felicia. I work with my father, who is a voiceover coach who travels around the country teaching master classes, and he actually, we're starting a business called Voiceover Via, which is basically a compilation of like information from like heavy hitters in the industry who have expertise to share with people who want to get into VO but don't really know where to start and like what is involved in that. We've currently gotten some content from Disney casting director Sarah Sherman.
Is this like your elevator pitch for your business, or did you
No.
have a question?
I have a question. Lisa Bates
Just joking.
of
Calm
Care
down.
Bears fame, and Chuck Huber of Funimation, and Felicia. I'm gonna shoot my shot. You're 1,000,000% allowed to say no. Are you interested in giving us some of your expertise? And who would we contact to try to make that happen? We'd pay you, obviously.
Dude, let's not do this right now. Let's
Just
not.
wondering if you're
I appreciate your asking me. I have such a crazy schedule because like I mentioned, the breeding thing. I can't really fit extra things in, but
That's totally understandable.
your organization sounds really cool, especially as a resource for people who might not live in LA or New York and might not know how to get a foothold in it. So thank you for asking me, and good luck with it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
I like your shirt. Thank you.
Hi guys, I have a pet peeve when it comes to voiceovers in games, and it's that line of random dialogue that just keeps coming up and you get so sick of hearing it. But it's my own fault because it's like a Skinner box. When I hear that there's like multiple lines of dialogue that are, you know, kind of random, I'll just sit there and keep pressing the button and hear all the responses. So is there like a middle ground? Is there a way to, you know, to solve this so that, I know what they're going for is so that when you randomly come up and talk to somebody, you'll get a new response. But if I've listened to all of them, well then, you know. But I feel bad at the same time, like, you know, if you guys have taken the trouble to record 15 different responses, I want to take the time to listen to them, so.
Seems like a self-control problem.
And I guess what I'm really looking for here is permission to not hear those last 10. You know, is it okay?
I believe
Just
there's
as
support
an
groups
artist.
available. Yeah.
I think every single line is a precious jewel that has been created for you. That's what I'm saying. To your machine. And download it over the internet at great cost to humanity. And I think that what everybody else should be doing is listening to all of them too.
Can I just say, you're the person that devs hate.
Wait, what's your name?
John.
John?
Yep.
Okay, record this. John, don't press the button.
Record this. John, press the button, John. Press the button.
Don't press the button, John.
It's going to be a new line. Totally new experience.
Don't do it. I'm really thinking about it. Go.
I appreciate the advice, guys. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm also named James, so that guy earlier stole my spotlight. But real quick, I want to lead with Felicia. Beeps loves you so much. She said hi. Okay. So my question is, I was wondering if you guys could speak to a relationship in video games between kind of the scope of how many characters are in the game and the quality of voice acting. So to give an example, I play Skyrim, which is like a great game, and I don't think anyone here has anything bad to say about it, except I think they got like 4 voice actors for the entire game.
Yeah.
Like every character in the game has that same like Nordic voice or an elf, that's it.
Yeah.
But to contrast that, the game Firewatch, if anybody's played it, the voice acting in that game is quality to a point where it's almost no longer voice acting in a video game. It's that like immersive, and I think, in my opinion, that's a relationship between the scope of how many characters. There's only 2 characters in the game, and I'm talking really fast. I was wondering if you guys could speak to that relationship.
Skyrim, they had a lot of work to do, man.
Yeah.
They had a lot of to do.
I think it's based on budget, honestly. I don't know. I'm not familiar with that side of like the casting and why only a few actors are picked for that.
Well, I think for Skyrim, I don't know what, I mean, if you played all the Fallouts, like objectively, New Vegas, I think, has the best acting, you know, the cast. Like, not because I'm in it, guys, no, I played that game obsessively with myself, but as a companion, but I did try out all the other companions, and I just feel like the acting in that one, the writing in that one particularly, was a cut above the other ones. The other ones felt like, you know, 4 I loved, but I never cared about the characters that much as I did in New Vegas, and I think that was kind of the writing and the investment that people put into the narrative. So I think it all comes from the writing and the priority of the devs to be like, this is important. Like, you know, I played 300 hours of Skyrim. I don't care how many elves sound exactly the same, right? So at the end of the day, it's also what kind of game you're making. And Firewatch was primarily like a narrative story with some graphics, right? It was almost like listening to a podcast while you went through a very beautiful landscape, which is a totally different kind of game. That's what's wonderful about games. There's so many different kind of games. I would love a Skyrim with, you know, romantical characters that I did have a husband. Scouts Mini Marshes, he was a lizard man, and I had 2 orphans that he took care of. You know, I had a very elaborate story that I created in Skyrim, but it wasn't supported by like the voice acting, and that would have been really awesome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Peter.
Hi, Peter.
Hey.
When you asked about our favorite voice actors, I started thinking about Robin Atkin Downs, and he's been in a lot of Kojima games. So I was wondering, with Death Stranding, do you feel that kind of mocap work and all the 3D modeling and stuff, do you think that may potentially take away from voice acting if actors themselves are just in the game?
Have you done
I have not done any mocap. No.
I did mocap for Dragon Age. I don't know how Death Stranding did it. I don't know if they record while they're moving and in their character, or if they do just the mocap and then record the performance later. I'm not really sure how that works. I have a lot of friends who do quite a lot of mocap, and it's super physically rigorous, you know? I mean, I know a couple of my friends were doing mocap like 2 weeks after they gave birth, and I was like, that's probably not a good idea. But like, it's really, you have to be a real athlete to do that kind of stuff. And it's really fascinating where technology is taking us. If you guys have looked at how The Mandalorian is shot, it's this incredible thing where basically everything's CGI. You can put the camera anywhere, everything is green screen skinned, and like, it's kind of like the Rubicon Valley between like reality and VR, you know, the picture is blurring to the point where video games are movies and movies are video games. So it's really interesting. I think the next 10 years is going to make it even more seamless, and I don't even know what you can define as TV or movie or video game at that point.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, my favorite voice actor is Tom Kenny. I like
Nice.
I'm trying to get into animation. How do I find voice actors?
How do you find voice actors for animation?
Yes.
It depends on your budget. A lot of people for indie projects post online.
Let's pretend the budget is $0.
Oh, then absolutely post online.
I have another question. Any of you doing autograph signings?
Are we?
I'm doing a signing at the Villager booth at 4:30, from 4:30 to 5:30. So I have to leave at 5:30 to go to the airport, but I will be doing a signing after this. So I guess they have stuff for me to sign from the game.
Anyone posted in the form?
Okay.
In my car would be that.
At 4:30, 4:30 to 5:30.
4:30.
I'm doing a signing that's actually started half an hour ago, so I should
Yes.
Did we get 2 more questions for the enforcers? Is that what I'm getting? Okay, cool.
Awesome.
Sorry, everybody else online. Sorry, everybody. We couldn't get to everyone. I'm so sorry.
Thank you so much.
Bye. You are the lucky 2. All right.
My favorite actor is the person that did Natsu for Fairy Tail.
Oh, nice. Excellent.
No offense to you. I love you too. I'm so you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. How much do I owe you?
I grew up playing games and watching anime, all that stuff. Ever since I started watching it, I always wanted to do voice acting. So, what do you think I should start trying to go for? Like animation or try to go for games?
I think you should probably go for as many things as you can. I mean, like Mike was talking about earlier in the panel, the work is really consistent when you're in the arts, whether you're a voiceover person or whether you're a writer or an artist and you draw things. Like, I think you really just need to go for out as many projects as you can, because I think it will really help you diversify your experience, and maybe through practicing other types of work, you'll discover, actually, maybe I really love doing commercial work, and maybe video games isn't the thing that I thought that I wanted, or maybe vice versa, you know. So I think you should really keep your eyes open to all different kinds of gigs.
Yeah, I think as far as, you know, whenever anybody's like, how do I get into the industry? How do I do this? And I'm like, don't think about the job, think about you as an artist. So make yourself the best artist you can, because if you try to go out and get a job and you're not ready for it, then people will think that you're not ready for it, and then they won't call you back. So like, I would advise you to work on any kind of acting that you can, like take an acting class, get involved in community theater, take a voiceover class, study the voiceover classes online. You know, there are a lot of people who have great resources online to sort of like define yourself. Like, listen to yourself and be like, hey, what's special about what I do that sets me apart from other people? And then, you know, I mean, even like my brother took Toastmasters, and he said it changed his life because he was so shy. And he took, you know, classes there, and he participated in that organization, and it made him so much more confident to speak. And so you have to really know that your voice is your talent, right? And you need to like show people the best side of you before you try to ask them to pay you for work. So that's what I would advise you to do. And wherever you live, there's going to be resources to get better at any of those things.
Become an expert. Just like how a doctor has to study medicine and go through years of training and schooling, as an actor, you're going to be competing against, possibly, me and Felicia.
And you're going to beat us, okay?
Yeah.
Good luck.
Not physically, don't like spell out some knees or anything. You too.
All right,
Last one.
I work with a local radio theater group.
Cool.
We do live theater, but it's all voice acting.
Nice.
And one of the challenges that our actors regularly experience when they come in from regular theater to voice acting is the lack of physicality on the microphones. Our Foley people can, of course, make expansive gestures, but our actors really struggle with being tied to the mic. So I'm wondering if you guys can talk a little bit about your experience kind of pulling in and being in front of a microphone and trying to voice a character who in a game is very expansive, very active, but you yourself are very restricted to that recording booth.
Do you move a lot in the booth?
I mean, you go. I mean,
I'm just curious, do you?
do I what?
Do you move a lot when you record?
I had to teach myself not to. Yeah, when I first started, they're like, oh, you're moving back and forth from the mic, or you're turning when you're talking to somebody, or it's just natural instinct. And so you really have to train yourself to like only be here and only paint the picture with your voice versus like your body. And so I do move, like I'll go like this if it's something, but I know that I'm not doing anything. I don't have any like jingly jewelry on, and you know, I know that I'm not adding noise. I wear the appropriate clothes. So like these are all things I had to learn, you know, in order to do voiceover acting. Because you're right, you know, you should be able to close your eyes, and that's all you have. So it's something you have to learn.
I'm a Muppet. Whenever I'm recording, I'm moving constantly, but I guess I've learned to not move my head so much, but sometimes, you know, I'll be like, especially when I see my character on screen go like this, like just one, so, I'll frequently go, so, no, don't do that.
Yeah.
Or like fighting reactions, I've accidentally punched the boot or the mic before.
Yeah.
But there are some people who just don't move at all. I work with a director. Has anyone seen Space Dandy by any chance? There's a character in there named Meow. He flails a lot. His actor stands stock still with his hands behind his back going, yeah! He does all this weird screaming, but he just stands still. It's the weirdest thing in the world. He might be a serial killer.
That's really hard. I mean, to me, like, the one thing they gave me when I took a class, they were like, okay, it's okay for you to add a couple words in between before your line in order to get into the line.
Yes.
And just saying that, just giving me the permission to be like, okay, and here's what I have to say, being able to do that, because on-camera acting, you can't improvise, you know, you're just like, you work with what's there, they can't cut around you, generally. I mean, they do, because a lot of people don't know their lines, but it's fine. But mostly, you just want to say what's on the page, and having that permission to sort of like loosen, you know, grease the wheels a little bit is so, you know, it really frees you up to do the best work that you can. Because if you're afraid, you're not going to do good work.
Yeah, I'd say like there's a quote that one of my senpai says all the time, which is, dignity has no place behind a microphone. So whatever you need to do to get the sounds that you need to, do it. As long as you're on mic, that's all that matters.
That's a great piece of advice.
It is.
Great.
I'm gonna steal it. It's mine. I said, you learned from me.
I am going to steal that just to take it back to my group. I don't have to take it very far. We're in Somerville.
Excellent, good. It's not even mine. Have at it. You can have it for free.
Thank you. And thank you everybody for coming out. Since Morgan can't be here to finish the panel, she had to run. I just want to give a big thank you to Micah, to Guillaume, to Felicia for being on the panel today. Thank you to Dear Villagers for having us. As Felicia mentioned, she's doing a signing at 4:30 in the Dear Villagers booth on the show floor. And you guys can try the game, the Dungeons of Nahelbeck.
The
It's really good.
Amulet of Chaos.